Hello and welcome to the Worldwake episode of Set Musings. So we're on to the second set of the Zendikar block. This is a small set. It was a bit of a break from the normal blocks in as much as with a normal block what you'll often see is a large set and then two smalls. What happened with Zendikar block was that we had the large Zendikar set, the smaller Worldwake set, which we're going to have a look at today, but then a large set at the end in the form of Rise of the Eldrazi, which was designed to be drafted standalone. So when you were drafting the other sets, you would draft Zendikar standalone, but when you got to Worldwake, because it was a smaller set, you would have, say, 2 packs from Zendikar and 1 pack from Worldwake if you were drafting, or if you were playing sealed, you'd probably have 4 and 2 or 3 and 3, depending on various things. Whether if you had 4 and 2, the 4 was from the larger Zendikar set. So bearing that in mind, it's going to be interesting to see how the themes have spilt over into Worldwake, but also how many themes might crop up next week when we take a look at Rise of the Eldrazi. So we'll see. So let's dig into Worldwake. It's 145 cards in the set. Themes and mechanics to look out for. Well, we have a land theme still, but also we've got this thing whereby we have certain lands in the set turning into creatures. We have quests and we have traps, so there's definitely, a good deal of overspill between the large and the small. As we're going through, keep your eyes out for any things that you may have noticed in Zendikar in the previous episode, which may be slightly diluted down in Worldwake. Now, because lands are a thing still in this set, the keywords, ability words to look out for are Landfall, but also the other thing is there is a form of kicker, but in the form of multi-kicker as well. So yeah, so keep an eye out for those. You can see here set symbol is Hedron related, sort of a Hedron opening up. And you'll notice as well we've got references to Eldrazi, even though there's no Eldrazi yet, when not in this set. So obviously that's going to become a big thing when we get to Rise of the Eldrazi. I think they had a tagline for this, or one of several taglines I suppose, which was called When Lands Attack. And they did an interesting thing with that, in as much as the particular lands I'm talking about were also dual lands in terms of what mana they could produce. And keep your eyes open for some auras here as well that turn lands into creatures. We've got the blooded mechanic, which I'll show you in a moment what that exactly is if you've maybe not seen a previous episode on Zendikar, or sort of forgotten, as I often do, in what I covered from the previous week. There's an equipment theme in here, and we've got quests and traps. There's also some alternative cost stuff going on as well in here. Got some new Planeswalker as well. So if I just scroll down quickly, just to give you a bit of an overview. You got Stoneforge Mystic. Yeah, so keep your eyes open for a number of cards that were considered to be problematic in Standard at the time. And there was a number of vampires in here as well. And then a couple of multicoloured cards. Here's our equipment and some artifact creatures. And here's our non-basic lands, which we'll come back to in a moment. Not quite as many as the previous set, but there's also some interesting utility lands in there, which we can talk about. So, let's go through this systematically. So first up, just looking at the general themes and some other things to spot before we move into the cycles of the set. So, just 3 reprints in the set. Twitch, Smother and Quicksand. So Quicksand first printed in Visions, seen it in 10th edition. Smother was from last seen in Onslaught, and Twitch was first printed in Tempest, but also last seen in the 10th edition. There's a functional reprint in here as well. Goblin Rough Ride. There's a functional reprint of Goblin Cavaliers from Starter, save for a creature type. Some colour shifted stuff. Lone Lion, it's a colour shifted version of Curd Ape, and Jagwasp Swarm is a colour shifted version of Snapping Drake, I believe. And you probably noticed there's a number of notable cards as I scroll down there in this set. 142 cards are not reprints. And something I'm going to start doing, I've been doing it a little bit on and off recently, is just going through where things are sort of situated in terms of the amount of colours. So we've got 25 cards which are colourless. That includes artefacts and lands. We have 118 monocolour cards. There, Wolfbrow Elemental, and just a couple of 2-colour cards, Rexil the Risen Deep and Nova Blast Worm. So 10 mythics in the set. The breakdown in the set in terms of rarity is 60 commons, 40 uncommons, 35 rares and 10 mythic rares. And these are the mythics. So you can see we've got Admission Angel, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Abyssal Persecutor, Comet Storm, Dragon Master, Outcast, Avenger of Zendikar, Omnath Locus of Mana, Rexil the Risen Deep, Nova Blast Worm, and Eye of Ugin, which is the one that mentions Eldrazi spells, even though I don't believe there are any Eldrazi spells in this set. That was something to come. We have 14 non-basic lands. Some of those are obviously going to be cycles. And we have 4 quests, all enchantments. So whenever something happened, you put a quest counter on this card, on Quest for the Goblin Lord or Quest for the Nilstone, whichever enchantment you had in play. And as long as Quest for whatever it is, in this case Goblin Lord, has 5 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +2/+0. So you can see it does vary the amount of quest counters before something else happens. So something triggers that puts the quest counters on, and then once those quest counters get up to a certain count or not, so on this one, it's an interesting combination because it's looking at the also in the number of cards in hand. So opponent's upkeep, if they have no cards and you have 2 or more quest counters on here, and you may have that player lose 5 lives. So some interesting interactions where not only is it checking for the quest counters, but it might also be checking for something else, in this case the absence of cards in hand and your opponent. Six traps. And you can see what we've got here. Which is interesting. So with these, you notice there's this alternative cost in these. So it looks like there's a cycle here, which we'll come on to in a moment. Additionally, we've got this one, which is at rare, so it's like the odd one out, which actually reduces the cost to cast of it. So I suppose it was another form of alternative cost, but a reduction. And you can see here again, it's checking for certain types of creature in play, and if they are certain colours of creatures or a combination with something else. So this one's if you cast a red instant or sorcery this turn, or if an opponent did. If an opponent had a green creature into the battlefield, white creatures attacking, blue spell, and this one black. So you can see it's checking for would that be some sort of enemy color check? Yeah, going on there. I'm sure we'll come back to these in a moment. There's our landfall, so 16 landfall cards. So we've seen this before, so whenever a land enters the battlefield, that triggers something to happen. And you can see that might be combined up with some other ability, which may or may not be synergistic. In the case of Scribnibblers, you can see this ability to do, like a one card. So what's happening here is obviously you're exiling the top card of a player's library. So you're milling it into exile. And if it's a land card, you get 1 life. But also, when a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to untap Scribnibblers. So you can repeat that ability. Uh, 16 cards with kicker, and they are all multi-kicker. So with multi-kicker, you got a multi-kicker cost which you add on to the casting cost, but you can also pay it multiple times to get additional effects. So with this one, it's doing stuff with +1/+1 counters, which happens every time you kick it. Life on this one, more counters here. So clearly counters are a thing, so I wouldn't be surprised in a moment if we don't see a cycle of these. And then also we had this artifact which had multi-kicker on it, which allowed you to charge up the chalice. One Eldrazi card, Eye of Ugin, even though we had no Eldrazi in the set. So a colourless Eldrazi spells cost 2 less to cast, 7 tap, search your library for a colourless creature card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's been reprinted a few times, but mainly as special cards. Well, I suppose, yeah, well, certainly outside of main sets, you know. So it's been reprinted in a Modern Master set, and then as a special card, Zendikar Expedition, and then as a Judge's Gift card. I mentioned about this, what do they call it? I want to call it bloodletting. Bloodied mechanics. So there was only one of those that was in that area, that mechanic, which was Ruthless Coldblade. So it gets +2/+0 and has, as long as an opponent gets 10, opponent has 10 or less life. Okay, a cycle of landfall instants, I believe, at common, and they have an increased effect if landfall is activated. So whatever they do it more if you have landfall triggered. So what's this? Life gain, card draw, power toughness, depletion, direct damage and pump all get amplified if the landfall can get triggered. If you had a land enter the battlefield under your control this turn, then extra effect. Cycle of common multi-kicker creatures. So at common they have the ability multi-kicker 1 and then the colour, and enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. Well, 3 of them are 2/2s, the other 2 are 1/1s, and they do, you can see the Hawks has flying on it, the Enclave Elite, Island Walk, Quag Vampire's got Swamp Walk, the red one, Skitter of Lizards, has haste, and then Gnarled Pack doesn't have anything beyond this pump spell for kicking. And of course it's actually putting counters on, so they stay there. Common spell lands. So yeah, a common, they enter the battlefield tapped. Tap for a colour, and they have an appropriate enters the battlefield ability. So the white one gets you protection or creature control protection. The blue one, top of the library, shenanigans. The black one, basically graveyard hate. The red one makes a creature unblockable, and the green one spits out a token, a 0/1 plant token. So there's these enchantments, specifically auras at common. They're called, I believe, the Zendikar cycle, and they turn lands into creatures and return the land to its owner's hand if it's put into the graveyard. So you can see here all of these have this ability on the bottom here. But they'll convert it to, you know, the appropriate type of creature for that colour, I suppose. So you've got a white ward, blue elemental, black ooze, a red beast, and a green elemental. So 2/6 with defender, 2/2 with flying, 3/3. Red 2 with trample, 4/2 with trample, and a 6/4. Okay. Allied Beneficiaries. So a cycle of 5 creatures that get better if their controller also controls a land of an allied colour. So with the Loam line, it's a forest. With the Sigiri Merfolk, it's plains, shoreline salvager, island, slavering knolls, swamp, and summit apes. A mountain. And I did mention that you have what is the Loam line, is a colour shifted version of Curd Ape. Now these ones, so in addition to the auras, you have land that rather conveniently turns into creatures. They come into play tapped. They can turn into creatures until the end of turn, once they're, so they come into play tapped. Obviously they've got to be untapped to do that, because you need to, I was just trying to think, there wouldn't be any point. I was just wondering with the cost, so that the cost, you don't have to, obviously, they can still put cost into it, but why would you put cost into a tapped land? Because you can't use it to block anything. So yeah. They're all at rare, 1 for each allied colour pair, and also able to produce colour once they're untapped for that coloured pair. So you can sort of see here that also the cost you've got to invest to convert this into a creature. But you can see there's some additional abilities here. So this one, we've got +1/+1 counters going on. This one we can also invest additional mana for like a fire breathing effect. This one's got reach. So pretty cool. I always like this one, the unblockable 3/2. Cycle of traps. These were enemy coloured activated traps. So they're all uncommon, and they have alternative cost triggered for an action with enemy colour that an enemy colour usually performs. So, Planeswalkers. I remember I mentioned in the previous set there was a mega cycle, so Planeswalkers across the block. So, Jason Mind Sculptor is the Planeswalker from that cycle that's in Worldwake. This was a big card at the time. The three from Zendikar, just to remind you, are Sorin Markov, Chandra Blaze, Nissa Ravane. We've already seen those. And Gideon Jura is the one we're going to see next week in Rise of the Eldrazi. So yeah, one of several cards which were notable, most powerful Planeswalker ever printed, played in various control and aggro control decks across all formats, and this card and Stoneforge Mystic were the first cards to be banned in Standard in nearly 6 years apparently, and a few months later the card, this Jason Mind Sculptor, was also banned in Modern, and then in what was Extended at the time, because Extended was still going. I mentioned Stonefall Mystic. We've seen Rexall the Risen Deep, another notable card. I believe that was designed by Ken Nagel as a commander he wanted to play. So already we're seeing, commander cards sneaking in, even though this would have been before the Commander product, but not before they released those two EDH decks on Magic the Gathering Online. We've got Death's Shadow in here as well in this set, and Abyssal Persecutor. There's the match pair, so one from Zendikar, which we saw last week, and we also looked at Marsh Threader. So just a reminder, there's those two pairs, but they're across the two sets, the two first sets. Okay, so here's all the land, 14 land. I mentioned the two cycles. What have we got in addition? Well, we've got another land that converts into a creature, but it's colourless, so Dread Statuary. So obviously similar to these, but this is an uncommon, interestingly enough. We've got Eye of Ugin, which we've already seen. Also Quicksand, which we already saw because that was a reprint. And then we had this interesting card here, Tectonic Edge. So we have a very interesting conditional land destruction land, reminiscent of Strip Mine and Wasteland, and my understanding was that it was included because of the presence of these lands that are converting into creatures. So yeah, plus I suppose also with a block, particularly the first two sets, which was so land based, it's a good to have some sort of way of dealing with problematic non-basic lands, whatever they might be. And so this was a tool for that, and printed at uncommon. So legendaries, I think what I'm going to do going forward is rather than have planeswalkers and creatures, I'm just going to group the legendaries together and then just point out, in a particular set, what the balance was like. You can see here we have one planeswalker, one legendary land, and then the rest are legendary creatures. Interestingly, we don't have a legendary creature in white. We have one in blue, black, red and green, but we do have a multicolour one in blue, black. So whenever Rexall the Risen Deep deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. That's a 5/8 for 3, 2 blue and a black. It's got Island and Swamp Walk on it. Some interesting mono-coloured legends here, and these were all at, well, 3 of these here you can see were printed at rare, and we've got one of the monocolours at Mythic, but the multicolour was also at Mythic, as was Jace and Eye of Ugin. If I don't know how clearly you can see, it can be quite tricky when you're scrolling and actually see the difference between sort of gold and this orangey colour. This was doing stuff with mana pool emptying at the steps and phases end, and also doing stuff with green mana in terms of it got +1/+1 for each green mana in your mana pool. Tharda Adel Acquisitor, what's that doing? When it deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and shuffle it, and that player shuffles the library until end of turn. You can play that card. Anwan the Ruin Sage, 3 and 2 black for 4/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. So vampire tribal that just hates on everything apart from vampires. Because that's each player, including yourself. So if you've got any utility creatures, and of course I'm thinking of specifically EDH here, I suppose. Although of course it could be in any format. You could play tribal, but obviously lends itself well to a multiplayer format. You're going to get punished for any non-vampire utility creatures you might have, as well as your opponents. So 3/3. Okay, so this is interesting. So whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, put a 3/3 red ogre creature token onto the battlefield unless that creature's controller plays 3. Okay, so back to our cards here. We've got 74 creatures in the set, and as I scroll down, I think you can get some idea of the different tribes that might be on offer here. So we've got some core stuff, some human soldier allies. Remember in the Zendikar set musings I was talking about allies. There is, although I didn't necessarily cover it in this set, again, there is a mechanic in here, this ally mechanic, which isn't quite so represented as, say, in Zendikar, but it is still here. So that's the point I made at the start of the episode, is that, you know, keep your eyes open for anything that might be diluted a little bit from the previous set. There's also quite clearly life drain going on here to complement that other ability, the blooded mechanic. Yeah, see, there is. It looks like maybe what they did is printed an ally in each of the colours, by the look of things. Oh, there's actually saying that there's a couple there. Okay. It looks like there's slightly more in green. Sort of scroll back and got an old Pilgrim's Eye in here as well. That is interesting. Did they... So 1, oh, maybe 2 then. Looks like there's at least always 1 at common and 1 at rare by the look of things. So yeah, looks like we've got a common ally, and do we have a rare one in black? Probably not. So yeah, they're sort of playing around there. So, you know, 1, 2, or as we saw in green, 3, I think. got some ogres. You know, there's one uncommon in red. Got a spider as well here. Right. Here's our enchantments, our regular enchantments. So interesting one here, all lands are indestructible. And within this we have our where is it? So we've got some multi-kicker going on here. We've got the quests here. Here's our auras, and there's the Zendikons. So there's 9 of those, so 5 of those are part of that cycle. And then we've got this one doing creatures, this one doing creatures or land outside of the Zendikon cycle. Of course there's Claws of Valakut, which is dependent on the amount of mountains we control. So here's our artifact creatures. Pilgrim's Eye was in the set. Obviously handy something like this. Now also as well, this is going to help with Landfall, but notice that it's basic lands, so it's not going to help you with any of your non-basic utility or other things. And Walking Atlas will put land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast. Here's our equipment, just 4 pieces of equipment. Basilisk Collar gives a creature Death Touch and Lifelink. Cast for 2, cast for 1, equip for 2. Hammer of Ruin, +2/+0. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may destroy target equipment that player controls. Kite Sail gives a creature flying and +1/+0. And then Razor Boomerang. Interesting way of doing 1 damage. Very interesting themed card. Very flavourful. Now, I did make a mistake here. By the looks of things, so let me just do this, because what we're interested in is we would like to see, just the ones where it's just artifacts, no equipment, no creatures. Amulet of Vigor, Everflowing Chalice, and Seer's Sundial. Again, a number of cards in the set, either part of that whole landfall mechanic, or helping trigger landfall, or triggering off an ETB. Six traps. And as I pointed out previously, 5 of these are part of a cycle. The odd one out here, the one that isn't part of the cycle, is the Stone Idol Trap. Higher rarity, and it's slightly differently templated. 17 instants that aren't traps, because all the traps were instants. We've got tokens, life gain, pump, bounce, counter spell, card draw, counter spell with multi-kick, which is conditional, card draw and twiddling, whatever you want to call that, stapled together. Smother, so we got destruction for converted mana cost 3 or less creatures. -2/-2 with this landfall amplification. So -3/-3 spell here, which puts counters on vampires as well. If you tap them, +2/+0, another a scalable damage spell. Here's our 1 damage. Here's our pinger in red, but with the amplification on it. Here's our pump, artifact, enchantment, destruction, and a scalable counter. Okay, quite a lot of different things in there, but nothing. Yeah, again, altered slightly for the themes of the set, but still, I don't think there's any particular surprises there. In terms of sorcery speed stuff, there's our exile creature or enchantment. Okay, that's an interesting combo hate spell. Oh, sorry. No. That's on yourself. Search your library for any number of non-land cards and exile them. Then shuffle your library. Okay. So you're ditching non-land. Okay, yes. So you're in effect increasing the probability of you drawing land. Interesting. Got treasure hunt. So yeah. Oh, graveyard. Recursion. Discard based on swamps. A scalable damage spell that's based on the number of creatures on the battlefield. Land destruction, but also damage stapled to that based on the number of lands in that player's graveyard. Oh, one of these ones where you get like 3 different types of token. Yeah, you see that in other sets in green. We've got Explore, allows you to play an additional land this turn, and then a sorcery speed pump spell. I keep saying pump spell. It's basically adding counters. So it does pump the creature up, but permanently, unless the creature counters get removed. So this is what they'd like a lure type effect on there. So just it's the way that green does removal. Okay, so back to the 145 cards. Just looking to see if there's anything else here that's worth talking about beyond the stuff I've seen. I'm seeing some life gain stuff going on here. I don't know what the payoff is apart from not dying or delaying when you die. It's an interesting clone spell. Oh, there's Abyssal Persecutor. So you can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game. It's flying in trample. Six for 4. So that's the downside. So you've got to find a way of removing that once you've achieved what you needed to achieve. And then we have this as well, Death Shadow. -2/-2, where X is your life total. So it gets better as your life total goes down. Right. Most expensive card in the set. Surprise, surprise. It's been reprinted a few times, but only by the look of things in Masters editions or as like a special printing. $62, oh sorry, $63. Stoneforge Mystic, 45. Now this wasn't this printed in? No, it wasn't. I could have sworn this was printed in a Commander product, but obviously not. Let me just check that in case it dropped it off the bottom. I don't think. I think it was. Oh, I know why. I'm thinking of those Planeswalkers that are commanders. That monocolour cycle that they did. That's why it's not the card wasn't in there, but it's just for some reason the artwork for the Planeswalker reminds me of this. Amulet of Vigor, $26. Wow. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped and under your control, untap it. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, this meshes really nice with those come into play tapped lands. Wow, okay. I'd completely forgotten about this. I mean, I saw it a moment ago, but yeah. Okay. Eye of Ugin, Worldwake 11. So we got a sudden drop there from, what was it, 63, 45, 26, 11, 42, and then down to 1066 for one of the quests, and 10, for Phyrexial. Yeah, that was printed in a Commander product 2011, and was basically in the anthology because it was in a 2011 deck, which must have been included in the anthology. Also in the new Capenna Commander as well. Any of these have different artwork? Well, the Secret Lair drop is quite different. Oh, this is 826. We'll be talking about this in a moment. And Death Shadow. So yeah. Oh, such memories. And then EDH ranking cards. Yeah, usual suspects. So Bojuka Bog, Nature's Claim, Zerenda of Zendikar, Arbor Elf, Everflame Chalice, Dispel, Explore, Alamar Depths. So you can see the common, I think they called them spell lands, I think. Tap spell lands. Cropping up. Butcher of Malakir, Comet Storm, Basilisk Collar. Great for giving a creature Death Touch and Lifelink. Stick it on your scary commander or other scary creature. There's Tectonic Edge, got Jace, Stoneforge Mystic. But that was in a, wasn't that in a deck? One of these, I'm sure, was in a, can someone comment in that? I know it, according to this, it wasn't in the Commander product, but wasn't that in a pre-con? One of the cards from this era was in a pre-con, and then it got banned. But I might be completely off mark here. Yeah, can someone clear that up for me if they can remember? Oh, look, I've sort of answered myself here. It was in a Magic Online theme deck, so Was that in a paper theme deck as well? I mean, I can't remember at what point it got banned. It may have been a bit later. But yeah, I'm sure this was in a pre-con of some description, but not a Commander product. Not a Commander product. Okay, so speaking of pre-cons, it'd be funny if it's in here, but I don't think it was. But I don't think they'd stick something like that in a pre-con at this point. So we have Brute Force, which is, I don't know, red-green stomp stuff. These would have still been, I'm assuming, 41 cards, where the 41st card was the holographic foil rare. So this had Wolfbriar Elemental and Terastodon in it. And not surprising, you were getting obviously cards from both Zendikar and it conceivably in these theme decks, but also the core set from M10. Fangs of the Blood Chief, Mono Black Vampire Tribal, had a couple of Piranha Marshes in it from the previous set, and one the Ruined Sage, which was not, interestingly enough, the holographic foil. The holographic foil was Butcher of Malakir. Should see which ones have got legendaries in them, just out of curiosity. We had a white-blue multi-kicker deck with Archon of Redemption and Marshal's Anthem, with Archon being the holographic. Mysterious Realms, green-blue Landfall, with Goliath Sphinx as our holographic rare and Seer's Sundial as our other rare. And then finally a red-white aggro rapid fire deck. Did have Teetering Peaks in it from the previous set. Mountains and Plains. We've got Mordant Dragon, which was our holographic foil, and Chain Reaction. So you can see pretty heavy creature presence here, and then some support sorceries. So we got some scalable damage there. What have we got in terms of just the removal? So we got Magnum Rift. We got an Act of Treason, which allows us to nick opponent's creature until end of turn. No Escape and Searing Blaze. Oh, okay, that was the Landfall damage spell that amplified the damage. Right, so coming up, so this episode goes out on a Monday. So on Wednesday's episode we have episode of Commander Durdle. Here's my card pool and the commander from the card pool, or the legend that turned up in the card pool. I think it was the only legend in here, yeah. Oh, no, actually that's not right. There was another legend. At least I thought there was. Yeah, Anawan. So I decided, I've done Vampire Tribal before, I think. Pretty sure. So I thought, let's do the other alternative, which is Ogre Aggro. So here's the sort of what do you call it, streamlined pool with just the cards that are playable because of their colour. Now I'll go through in the actual episode and prune this back a bit, because obviously there's going to be some stuff in here that doesn't belong in a red Ogre Aggro deck, or wherever Architect suggests us to go, but we'll clean up the seed the card seed before we let the algorithm loose on it, and take out some of the stuff that isn't appropriate here. But there's a few things here that I think probably end up staying in. It is an ogre deck, so I don't know. Yeah, so stuff like that's going to come out. We've got some goblins, but I suspect anything that's goblin tribal related and just doesn't necessarily fit in with this. But we'll see where it takes us. You're never quite sure what if you like, the average, the average is for this particular commander, and where that might take you, and what particular doors that opens in terms of deck building. So yeah, there we have it. That's another episode of very nostalgic episode of Set Musings there. And of course on Friday we'll be looking at some artwork close up. Again, it might just purely be the rares I pulled and mixed in with some other interesting stuff, but because it's a small set, I might be more likely to have some of the cycles at common. So again, I could compare the artwork across a cycle. But again, we'll just see how things pan out. It's quite possible, for instance, I might have the full cycle of those spell lands. And if I do, and I can locate them, then yeah, I'll go through those and we'll have a nice look at the artwork on that. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.